it appears that the judge is going to refuse to allow the Access Hollywood tape to be played for the jurors, but says the comments that Trump made could be introduced as evidence, I guess, of how women hated him, and that's why he needed to pay to bury this tape with Stormy. Alan, what do you make of it?
I think it was the right ruling. I think the tape itself should not go in, but anything he said is an admission. Look, it's so obvious that he had mixed motives in doing what he did, paying the hush money. Obviously, one of his motives was to protect himself from hatred from his wife and protect his family and his business and his friends. But another one of the motives may have been to enhance the possibility of getting elected. You don't prosecute people for mixed motives. You don't try to psychoanalyze a man running for president. They tried to do that, obviously, in the Edwards case. They failed. 60 years of teaching, practicing, and writing about criminal law. I've never seen a weaker case. But if you listen to CNN, this is the strongest case possible. This is a murder case where there's a confession and a videotape. But, it's just not true. This is an extraordinarily weak case requiring the state to speculate that the reason he failed to indicate the fact that he paid hush money was motivated by this desire to violate a federal statute, though the feds didn't prosecute, and though they haven't really focused and specified what the federal felony is. This is such a contrived case. You'd think if you're trying the president for the first time, a former president, you'd come in with a really, really strong case. And indeed, the state, the feds didn't prosecute him for this. Initially, the DA's office didn't go after him, but then radicals in the office, left-wing Trump haters, pressured Bragg to bring this case. And, he had promised he was going to get Trump. And so this is his attempt to get Trump. But of course, in New York, notwithstanding the weakness of this case, it's very possible that a jury will convict him. It's a jury that is probably going to be comprised of lots of people who voted against him. And the jury questionnaire is one of the dumbest questionnaires I've ever seen. They ask the jurors if your hatred or negative feelings toward Donald Trump will prevent you from rendering a fair verdict. What potential juror is ever going to admit that he can't give a fair trial, except if he wants to get off the jury? It's an invitation to perjury.
Yeah. Well, they're going to, because they're going to want to get on this trial. I mean, most people would love to be on this trial. Let's face it, they're all probably going to wind up writing books. They're going to be the next, what's her name? Cassidy Hutchinson, with their insider's take on whether Trump was or was not asleep. They're going to lie to get on the jury. And that's the problem. Like, you don't want an eager juror. And this is a district, Manhattan, that went 87% for Joe Biden, Josh. So they've, this is why Trump asked to move this case to something like Staten Island, which is much more Republican. Why, if Alvin Bragg's case is so strong, why can't he make it in front of a jury that's potentially more right-leaning?
Well, I mean, the question answers itself, Megyn, because as the esteemed professor rightly says, this case is one of the most farcical things that any of us who follow legal proceedings have seen really in our entire adult lives. I mean, just to try to kind of step back for a moment here. So Trump has basically 6 current trials, you might say, 4 of which are criminal prosecutions. And those criminal prosecutions are the 2 state prosecutions in New York and Georgia, and then Jack Smith's 2 federal probes in D.C. and Florida. Look, I am a fairly open conservative. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump this fall, but I will be intellectually honest and concede to you that I think at least the Florida case has at least some legal merit here. They're prosecuting under the wrong statute. The Espionage Act there is ridiculous. But all that's to say that I'm trying to assess this on my show, America on Trial, as intellectually honest as I can. This case in New York City, Megyn, as the professor just discussed, I mean, this is an absolute joke. So the SDNY, the federal prosecutor's office, looked into these exact charges. They passed on prosecuting. Alvin Bragg's predecessor in the Manhattan DA's office, Cy Vance Jr., he looked into this. He passed on it. There are too many issues here to count. So the underlying charge, fraudulent bookkeeping in New York State. First of all, last I checked, that had a 2-year statute of limitations. So the statute of limitations should have told a long time ago. Now, Alvin Bragg's theory of the case, the way that he purports to get around the statute of limitations problem while simultaneously upping this thing from a misdemeanor to a felony, is that his theory of the case is that the fraudulent bookkeeping, meaning the internal accounting books at the Trump organization, because they said the Michael Cohen stuff was legal services, it was actually a campaign contribution. He's saying that it's in furtherance of the campaign in 2016. But as Professor Dershowitz just said, it seems fairly obvious that at best, there are mixed motives when it came to Donald Trump's reasons for wanting Stormy Daniels to pipe down there. Now, look, Donald Trump, say what you will about him. Again, I'm planning on voting for him this fall. But, he's not exactly a Jerry Falwell moral majority figure. I mean, at his penthouse in Trump Tower, he's got the Playboy magazine covers there. This is not the kind of guy who would necessarily feel the need to go above and beyond to kind of keep this porn star from speaking out there. So surely, I think any reasonable juror who's not a left-wing zealot should be able to conclude that indeed there were at best mixed motives here. But they're going to get a very biased jury pool, Megyn. You're making a very astute observation, is that the incentives here are deeply, deeply perverse for people to want to get on that jury, to go sell the book, go do the CNN, MSNBC talking circuit there. It's going to be a total circus. And the most important point is that this is a point of no return for the American Republic. It is just so sad, I think, for those of us who call ourselves constitutionalists. Many of us rued the day that this would come, and it's finally here. And it's really quite tragic, I think.
That's how I feel. I feel sad today. I don't. Listen, Trump and I have had a weird relationship, and it's not like I'm his number one fan, but I feel sad. I feel sad for him, and I feel sad for us. We made it almost 250 years without doing this, and now we crossed that barrier for what? For this? For Stormy Daniels? For not documenting a hush money payment, which, Alan has said many times on his show, that it defies the whole nature of the hush money payment if you have to write it down and say this was to pay off a porn star so she didn't tell everybody. But I do want to get into the specific allegations and to the jury pool and the jury selection, because that's what's happening today, and it's very interesting to me. Alan, you've been involved in countless numbers of jury selections. This is where you win or lose the case. We just saw, in fact, speaking of you, we just saw one of these clips resurface from the OJ trial. And this woman was one of the jurors. She happens to be Black, and she was talking about how she kind of openly was into the jury nullification. She knew she was going to vote in his favor, even though she believed he did it. Just as a reminder, here's that soundbite. It's SOT 50 from ESPN.
I think that they're members of the jury that voted to acquit OJ because of Rodney King.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
How many of you think felt that way?
Oh, probably 90% of us.
90%? Did you feel that way?
Yes.
That was payback.
Uh-huh.
You think that's right?
She shrugged. So the jurors do it. They like to get on the jury for all sorts of reasons, and they might come to certain conclusions for all sorts of reasons. And the defense lawyers and the prosecution's job is to figure out what those motivations are and either get them on or off. So you tell me, if you were advising Trump's team, what's their ideal jury look like?
Well, first of all, let's go back to the OJ case for 1 second. It was the prosecution who decided what the jury pool would be. They could have tried the case in a suburban white area, but they decided to bring it downtown. They decided to have 9 Black women jurors on the theory that they would be more sensitive to their role as women than as Black. They made every mistake in the book. Anise Aschenbach, the white juror, decided to acquit, even though she thought he probably did it, because she believed the police tampered with evidence. So there's lots of reasons why jurors would either acquit or convict. But I agree with you. Jury bias is one of them. The jurors I would pick, if I had my way, would be obviously policemen, government workers, ordinary hard workers. I would try to get non-college graduates. I would try to avoid the elite kind of left-leaning, typical Upper West Side. I hate to stereotype New York jurors, but it's not going to be easy. Remember, you only have a certain number of peremptory challenges, and this judge seems utterly biased against Trump, and I don't think he's going to allow challenges for cause. Apparently, what I heard, at least this morning, he's not going to allow follow-up questions by lawyers if a juror says, well, I think I can be fair, even though there are facts that suggest maybe they couldn't be fair. Look, if I were the defense attorney, I would insist that no juror be asked, can you be fair? It's an absurd question. You should be asked, what have you ever said about Donald Trump? what has anybody ever said to you about Donald Trump? What have you heard about him? What radio shows do you listen to? What TV shows? What newspapers do you read? I would try to get the facts, but I wouldn't allow the juror to express a view as to whether he can be fair or not. As I said before, that's an invitation to perjury. And so I think we're going to see a lot of perjury committed, and I don't think we're going to see a judge who's going to try very hard to get an absolutely fair jury in this case. So, I think it's very likely in the end there'll be several jurors who will have disguised their strong bias against Trump in order to get on the jury and convict him regardless of the evidence.
There are some common sense reasons gold is pushing to all-time highs right now. The cost of goods continues to rise, for one, you know that. The national debt continues to skyrocket, above $34 trillion now, causing many to worry about when this house of cards is going to come crashing down and on whom. And then there's our presidential election year. That's going to have massive implications on the future of this country. All of this can add up to instability and uncertainty. And that's why many Americans are turning to Birch Gold Group. Have you diversified your savings yet? One option you could consider is to secure a portion of your savings with gold from Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and get your free information kit. You'll learn how to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold without costing you anything. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. Just text MK to 989898 to claim your free info kit and learn how you might protect your savings from uncertainty today. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.